November 2008, the Federal Reserve announces a plan for quantitative easing. March 2009, the Fed announces an aggressive plan to expand quantitative easing north of $1 trillion. On May 13, 2010, the National Inflation Association released a documentary called Melt Up, making the case that the Federal Reserve would not only not allow deflation to occur, but because of the U.S. debt obligations, would not be able to. November 3rd, 2010, the Fed announces QE2, the second phase of quantitative easing. Greetings and thank you for joining us at inflation.us. This week, millions of Americans went to the polls to vote. They went to vote for candidates who said they were going to cut taxes, raise taxes, or keep taxes the same. But they went to make their voice heard. Meanwhile, Ben Bernanke and his banking friends raised taxes on the entire world. And they did not have to go to Congress. They did not have to debate with the Obama administration on whether they were going to extend or phase out the Bush tax cuts. Instead of Americans debating about what party is going to be in power, we should be debating about whether or not we are going to phase out the Federal Reserve System completely. Ben Bernanke was able to raise taxes directly on you. Every single person, in fact, every single person in the world, because he is in charge of the global reserve currency. I personally would rather have the Congress and president raise taxes on me directly, raise my tax rate, because then at least I know it's only going to affect my new income. It's only going to affect new profits. But when Ben Bernanke raises taxes, when he adds an inflation tax, it not only affects new income, it not only affects new profits, it affects everything we've already earned, everything we've already saved. And this just isn't in America. When the inflation tax hit, it also hits foreigners. It hits the entire Chinese reserve. That's the reason you're seeing this global backlash from quantitative easing. Upon hearing the news about quantitative easing too, a Chinese advisor to the central bank said unbridled printing of dollars is the biggest risk to the global economy. The Brazilian finance minister also said, it does no one any good to just throw dollars from a helicopter. We here at the National Inflation Association couldn't agree more with those statements. Here in the United States, we have record rising long-term unemployment. We have record foreclosures. We have record food stamps. 1 in 7 Americans right now are on food stamps. And yet the government tells us that things are going to be fine if we just create a little more inflation. And of course, they're basing the little more inflation off of their CPI. That's right, the people who are telling us they're creating inflation are also in charge of reporting how much inflation we're seeing. Well, let's look at the raw data. In the last 60 days, we have seen cotton prices rise 54%, corn up 29%, soybean prices up 22%, orange juice up 17%, sugar prices up 54%, and since the beginning of July, wheat prices up 36%. And that is why we're seeing Main Street have a meltdown while Wall Street has a melt up. And meanwhile, Ben Bernanke has the nerve to tell you that the inflation he's going to create, the treasury purchases he has planned, are going to create jobs somehow. Like that's worked for the last 2 years. Like this style of money printing worked for the Weimar Republic or Argentina recently. Look, the Treasury Department is borrowing 42 cents for every dollar it spends. We have north of $81 trillion in unfunded liabilities off the budget, off the official budget of $14 trillion. Ben Bernanke isn't trying to create jobs, he's trying to save the Treasury Department. There simply isn't enough buyers. There's not going to be enough buyers to purchase the demand from the Treasury Department to fund its constant and growing deficits. The Federal Reserve is literally creating out of thin air Federal Reserve IOU notes in order to purchase, created out of thin air, Treasury Department IOU notes. We have clearly entered the last gasp of our monetary system in the United States. As an American, it is painful to talk about this stuff. I don't like looking at quantitative easing. I don't like seeing our government literally trying to print its way to try to pay off its bills. We're beyond trying to print our way to prosperity. We're printing just to survive in this country. It's painful because I know how many people are going to wake up one morning or turn on the evening news and see Asian markets with major volatility. Not because of what's going on in Asia, but because the currency in our savings accounts, the currency that we hold, the currency that we're being paid in, is in a midst of collapse. Most people will find this to be heart-stopping news when gold goes up $500 in several hours. I hope that you're one of those people who takes the time to not only prepare themselves to weather the storm, to prosper in it, prosper after it, but take the time to prepare others. If you haven't seen the recent documentary at inflation.us, End of Liberty, I want to point out something that is kind of frightening. A lot of the stories were recent in the documentary End of Liberty. But I want you to think about the Patriot Act. I want you to think rising home prices, a lot of people making money. A lot of times government oversteps its bounds in prosperous times, or at least the perception of prosperous times. What do you think is going to happen when the entire country is losing value because of our currency? That Americans are thrown in to a currency crisis, going directly from Dancing with the Stars and American Idol into, are we going to be able to purchase something at the grocery store? Unfortunately, government will attempt to overstep its bounds, and the only thing that is going to stop it is you.